William of Orange emerged as the central rebel leader. The conflict, later known as the Dutch Revolt or the 80 Years' War, combined religion, constitutional resistance, local identity, foreign intervention, and economic power. Spanish forces captured cities with terrible brutality, while rebels also committed atrocities. The sack of Antwerp by mutinous unpaid Spanish troops in 1576, known as the Spanish Fury, killed thousands and shocked Europe. Again, imperial finance and military violence were inseparable. A wealthy monarchy could still fail to pay its soldiers because revenues arrived late, debts consumed income, and war expanded faster than taxation. The northern provinces eventually formed the Dutch Republic, while the southern Netherlands remained under Habsburg rule. The loss was more than territorial. The Dutch became commercial and naval rivals, building a global empire of their own. Amsterdam rose as Antwerp declined. A rebellion against Habsburg centralization helped create one of the most dynamic republics of the early modern world. Philip's reign also brought confrontation with the Ottoman Empire. In 1571, a Christian coalition known as the Holy League, commanded by Philip's half-brother Don John of Austria, defeated the Ottoman fleet at the Battle of Lepanto. The victory was celebrated across Catholic Europe. It checked Ottoman naval prestige but did not destroy Ottoman power, and strategic control in the Mediterranean remained contested. The battle became a monument in Habsburg memory because it offered what rulers always desired: a clear victory that art, sermons, and ceremony could turn into a sacred narrative. The conflict with England proved less satisfying. After Mary I's death, Elizabeth I restored Protestantism, supported Dutch rebels, and tolerated or encouraged privateers who attacked Spanish shipping. Philip had once proposed marriage to Elizabeth, but relations deteriorated. The execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1587 intensified Catholic outrage. Philip prepared a massive naval expedition intended to escort an invasion army from the Netherlands to England. In 1588, the Spanish Armada sailed. English attacks disrupted its formation, communications with the army failed, and storms battered the fleet during its retreat around Scotland and Ireland. The Armada's defeat became central to English national mythology, though Spain remained a major power and rebuilt its navy. The deeper lesson was logistical: coordinating fleets, armies, weather, and distant commands exceeded even Philip's administrative machinery. At home, Philip built El Escorial, a vast complex northwest of Madrid that served as palace, monastery, church, library, mausoleum, and symbol of disciplined Catholic kingship. Its austere grandeur reflected his self-image. He collected art, books, relics, and knowledge. The Spanish Habsburg court patronized painters, musicians, architects, theologians, and writers. The period later called Spain's Golden Age unfolded under rulers whose politics were burdened by debt and war. Miguel de Cervantes fought at Lepanto and later wrote Don Quixote, a masterpiece that gently dismantled fantasies of chivalric glory. El Greco produced visionary religious paintings. In the next generation, Velázquez would turn court portraiture into psychological revelation. Philip died in 1598 after a long and painful illness. His reign had preserved and expanded much of the monarchy, but it left unresolved wars and financial strain. The crown declared bankruptcy more than once, restructuring its debts rather than simply ceasing to exist. Castile was heavily taxed. Inflation, influenced in part by the influx of silver, altered the economy. The monarchy's image of invincibility exceeded its administrative capacity. Philip's son, Philip III, inherited a machine that was magnificent, expensive, and increasingly dependent on favorites known as validos, who governed in the king's name. Philip III was less interested in constant personal administration than his father. The Duke of Lerma became the dominant court figure, accumulating wealth and influence. In 1609, the crown expelled the Moriscos, descendants of Muslims who had converted to Christianity, many under coercion. Officials accused them of disloyalty and incomplete assimilation. The expulsion uprooted hundreds of thousands of people, devastated communities, and harmed parts of the economy, especially in Valencia and Aragon. It also illustrated the Habsburg commitment to religious uniformity, a policy that strengthened certain forms of royal and Catholic identity while sacrificing human diversity and productive subjects. A temporary truce with the Dutch reduced conflict, but Spain remained entangled in European rivalries. When Philip IV came to the throne in 1621, his chief minister, the Count Duke of Olivares, sought to revive royal power and distribute military burdens more evenly across the monarchy. Castile could no longer finance everything. Olivares proposed a union of arms requiring different kingdoms to contribute troops. The plan collided with local privileges and mistrust. A composite monarchy that had been assembled by inheritance could not easily be transformed into a centralized state. Philip IV's court was one of the great artistic centers of Europe. Diego Velázquez painted the king, royal children, dwarfs, jesters, workers, mythological scenes, and the mysterious masterpiece Las Meninas. His portraits captured the Habsburg face without erasing its humanity. The long jaw, pale skin, formal black clothing, and controlled posture became signs of dynasty. Yet behind the ceremonial surface stood exhaustion. Philip endured military defeats, family deaths, and the collapse of political ambitions. He fathered many illegitimate children but struggled to secure the legitimate succession. Spain entered the 30 Years' War to support the Austrian Habsburgs and defend strategic routes linking Italy to the Netherlands. Early victories sustained the image of Habsburg strength, but the conflict expanded. France, though Catholic, entered openly against the Habsburgs under Cardinal Richelieu because geopolitical interest outweighed religious solidarity. In 1640, Portugal rebelled and restored an independent dynasty. Catalonia also revolted, inviting French support. The same year revealed how thinly the monarchy's resources had been stretched. At Rocroi in 1643, French forces defeated a Spanish army in a battle later treated as the symbolic end of the Tercios' invincibility. Spain did not collapse immediately, but the balance of power was shifting. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 ended the 30 Years' War and confirmed Dutch independence. Spain continued war with France until 1659, when the Treaty of the Pyrenees ceded territory and arranged the marriage of Philip IV's daughter Maria Theresa to the young Louis XIV. The marriage was supposed to improve relations, but its inheritance terms would later be used by France to justify claims against Spain. Diplomatic marriages created peace for one generation and lawsuits for the next. Philip IV's only surviving legitimate son was Charles II, the child whose death chamber opened this story. Charles became king in 1665 at the age of 4. His mother, Mariana of Austria, served as regent. She was also his father's niece, a fact that summarized the Spanish Habsburg family structure. Charles's ancestry contained repeated lines of descent from the same couples. He suffered from severe health problems, developmental delays, and infertility. Foreign observers cruelly described him as bewitched, and the court itself eventually subjected him to exorcisms. The supernatural explanation reflected the desperation of people unable to understand genetics, endocrine disorders, neurological illness, or the cumulative effects of generations of close-kin marriage. Charles's personal suffering unfolded amid international predation. Louis XIV repeatedly attacked Spanish possessions. Ministers and court factions competed for influence. Spain's population and finances had been damaged by war, epidemic, and economic difficulty, though the monarchy still possessed enormous territories. The central political question was succession. Charles married twice but had no child. European powers negotiated secret partition treaties while publicly insisting on his sovereign rights. The king faced an impossible choice: leave the empire to a Bourbon prince tied to France, or to an Austrian Habsburg whose inheritance might recreate Charles V's immense concentration of power. In his final will, Charles named Philip of Anjou, grandson of Louis XIV and Maria Theresa of Spain, as heir to the entire monarchy, on condition that the Spanish and French crowns remain separate. When Charles died in 1700, Louis accepted the will for his grandson, who became Philip V. The French king reportedly presented the young prince to the court with words announcing that Spain had a new king. Europe saw danger. If France and Spain acted as a single bloc, the balance of power might collapse. England, the Dutch Republic, Austria, and allies formed a coalition to support the Austrian claimant, Archduke Charles. The War of the Spanish Succession began, ending the Spanish Habsburg line but proving that the dynasty's inheritance could remain powerful even after the dynasty itself vanished from Madrid. While the Spanish branch moved toward its childless ending, the Austrian branch had been fighting a different battle for survival. Ferdinand I, younger brother of Charles V, never possessed his brother's global prestige, but he performed the less glamorous work of building a durable Central European monarchy. Born in Spain and raised there until adolescence, Ferdinand was initially viewed with suspicion by Charles, who feared that Spanish nobles might prefer the younger brother as a native prince. The brothers eventually divided responsibilities. Ferdinand received the Austrian hereditary lands and became Charles's representative in the empire. Through his marriage to Anna of Bohemia and Hungary, he gained claims that became urgent after her brother Louis II died at Mohacs. The acquisition of Bohemia and Hungary in 1526 was one of the greatest expansions in Habsburg history, but it was not a simple inheritance. Bohemian estates elected Ferdinand and expected him to respect their privileges. Hungary was split among Habsburg supporters, followers of John Zapolya, and Ottoman-controlled territories. Royal Hungary, governed by the Habsburgs, consisted mainly of western and northern regions. Central Hungary fell under direct Ottoman rule, while Transylvania developed as an Ottoman vassal principality. For generations, the Habsburg monarchy lived beside fortified borders, raids, ransoms, military colonies, and communities accustomed to war. Ferdinand was a negotiator by necessity. He dealt with Protestant princes in the empire, Catholic reform, Ottoman pressure, and provincial estates that controlled taxation. He helped produce the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, which allowed Lutheran rulers in the Holy Roman Empire to determine the official religion of their territories under the principle often summarized as cuius regio, ius religio. The settlement excluded other confessions and did not solve the empire's religious problem, but it recognized that Charles V's dream of one enforced Catholic unity had failed. When Ferdinand became emperor, he governed with greater flexibility than his brother had often shown. His son Maximilian II, emperor from 1564, was even more religiously ambiguous. Raised in a Catholic dynasty, he displayed sympathy toward Protestant ideas and resisted the most aggressive forms of persecution. His court included humanists and scholars. Yet he never formally broke with Catholicism, partly because dynastic authority depended on Catholic allies and institutions. Maximilian's moderation pleased neither side completely. Catholic reformers doubted him. Protestants wanted firmer guarantees. His reign demonstrated the difficulty of ruling a family monarchy whose subjects included Catholics, Lutherans, Calvinists, Orthodox Christians, Jews, Muslims, and communities with layered local identities. Maximilian's eldest surviving son, Rudolf II, became one of the most fascinating and troubled Habsburg rulers. Educated at the Spanish court, Rudolf inherited its rigid ceremony and intense Catholic atmosphere. As emperor, he eventually transferred his residence from Vienna to Prague, turning the Bohemian capital into a brilliant center of art, science, astrology, alchemy, collecting, and political intrigue. Rudolf gathered paintings, sculptures, rare animals, mechanical devices, gemstones, scientific instruments, and objects from distant lands. Artists such as Giuseppe Arcimboldo created imaginative works for his court, including a portrait of Rudolf composed of fruits, flowers, and vegetables as the Roman god Vertumnus. The emperor patronized the astronomers Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler, whose work helped transform humanity's understanding of the heavens. Prague under Rudolf seemed to contain the whole Renaissance imagination. Laboratories filled with furnaces and glass vessels, cabinets of curiosities, artists studying nature, diplomats whispering in corridors, astrologers calculating celestial influences, and scholars arguing over the structure of the universe. But the same emperor who cultivated knowledge struggled to govern. Rudolf suffered periods of severe depression, isolation, suspicion, and indecision. He never married and produced no legitimate heir. His brothers, especially Matthias, increasingly challenged his authority. Religious tensions grew in Bohemia and the Austrian lands. Rudolf's famous Letter of Majesty in 1609 granted significant religious freedoms to the Bohemian estates, including Protestant nobles. He issued it under pressure, and the settlement depended on mutual trust that did not exist. Matthias forced Rudolf to surrender Hungary, Austria, and Moravia, then eventually Bohemia. Rudolf died in 1612, surrounded by collections that symbolized both the grandeur and inwardness of his reign. His court had advanced art and science, but his political failures helped prepare the crisis that would engulf Central Europe. Matthias became emperor but had no children. The succession passed toward his cousin Ferdinand of Styria, a determined Catholic educated by Jesuits. Ferdinand had already pursued counter-Reformation policies in Inner Austria, requiring Protestant nobles and townspeople to convert or leave. To supporters, he was a pious ruler restoring religious order. To opponents, he threatened legal rights, property, and conscience. When he was accepted as future king of Bohemia, Protestant nobles feared that the religious guarantees won under Rudolf would be destroyed. The confrontation exploded in Prague in May 1618. Bohemian Protestant nobles entered the royal castle and confronted imperial governors whom they accused of violating religious liberties. In an act loaded with symbolism, they threw 2 governors and a secretary from a high window. The victims survived the fall, landing in or near a pile of refuse according to one famous version, though Catholic accounts credited divine protection. The event became known as the Defenestration of Prague. It was not the first political window-throwing in Bohemian history, but it became the opening drama of the 30 Years' War. The Bohemian estates rebelled, deposed Ferdinand, and offered the crown to Frederick V of the Palatinate, a Calvinist prince married to Elizabeth Stuart, daughter of King James I of England. Frederick accepted, earning the nickname the Winter King because his reign in Bohemia lasted only one winter. Ferdinand was elected Holy Roman Emperor in 1619 and assembled support from Catholic Bavaria, Spain, and other allies. On November 8, 1620, Imperial and Catholic League forces defeated the Bohemian army at the Battle of White Mountain near Prague. The battle itself was relatively short. Its consequences lasted centuries. Ferdinand reimposed Habsburg authority. 27 rebel leaders were executed in Prague's Old Town Square in 1621. Estates were confiscated and redistributed to loyal Catholic nobles, many of them foreign to Bohemia. Protestant clergy were expelled, and Catholic restoration intensified. The renewed constitution of 1627 made the Bohemian crown hereditary in the Habsburg line and strengthened royal power. Czech political culture later remembered White Mountain as a national catastrophe and the beginning of a dark age, though modern historians have emphasized that the social, linguistic, and cultural transformations were more complex than nationalist memory allowed. For the Habsburgs, the victory converted a contested elective relationship into firmer dynastic control. For many Bohemian families, it meant exile, loss, and the destruction of a political order. The war did not end with Bohemia. It widened through a series of phases involving German princes, Denmark, Sweden, France, Spain, the Dutch Republic, and numerous smaller powers. Religion mattered deeply, but so did territory, trade, dynasty, and fear of Habsburg supremacy. Ferdinand II's armies, led by commanders such as Johann Tsercles, Count of Tilly, and Albrecht von Wallenstein, achieved major early successes. Wallenstein was a Bohemian noble who had profited enormously from confiscated estates. He raised armies through a system that allowed troops to support themselves by extracting resources from occupied territories. His military entrepreneurship made him indispensable and dangerous. In 1629, Ferdinand issued the Edict of Restitution, demanding the return of many former Catholic church lands acquired by Protestants. The measure alarmed even princes who had not joined the rebellion. It suggested that the emperor might use victory to reshape the religious and political balance of the empire. The Danish king Christian IV had already intervened and been defeated. Then Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden entered the war in 1630, supported financially by Catholic France. The Swedish king combined military skill, disciplined forces, and a Protestant mission. His victories transformed the conflict. At Breitenfeld in 1631, Swedish and Allied troops crushed the Imperial army. The war moved across Germany with catastrophic consequences for civilians. Armies of the period lived off the land. Soldiers demanded food, money, horses, shelter, and clothing. When communities could not provide them, troops looted, burned, tortured, raped, and killed. Epidemics followed movement and malnutrition. Harvests failed because fields were abandoned or destroyed. Some regions of the empire lost enormous portions of their population, though the impact varied greatly from place to place. The 30 Years' War became a symbol of early modern devastation not because every year brought continuous battle everywhere, but because insecurity became a way of life. A village might escape armies for years and then be ruined in a week. Gustavus Adolphus was killed at the Battle of Lutzen in 1632, even though his army won the field. Wallenstein, increasingly independent and suspected of secret negotiations, was dismissed and then assassinated in 1634 by officers acting with imperial approval. Ferdinand's decision removed a potentially disloyal commander but also exposed the poisonous atmosphere of wartime politics. The Peace of Prague in 1635 reconciled the emperor with several German Protestant princes, yet France entered the war directly against the Habsburgs. Cardinal Richelieu's government placed French state interest above Catholic solidarity. The conflict became a struggle against both Austrian and Spanish Habsburg power. Ferdinand II died in 1637 and was succeeded by Ferdinand III, a more pragmatic ruler who sought peace while continuing the war. Negotiations dragged on for years in the Westphalian cities of Münster and Osnabrück. Diplomats debated precedents, religion, territory, and legal language while armies continued to move and civilians continued to suffer. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 did not abolish the Holy Roman Empire or make every prince fully sovereign in the modern sense, but it confirmed the empire's decentralized constitutional order, recognized Calvinism alongside Catholicism and Lutheranism, and limited hopes for a strong centralized imperial monarchy. France and Sweden gained influence and territory. The Dutch Republic and Swiss Confederation received formal recognition of independence from imperial structures. For the Austrian Habsburgs, Westphalia was both defeat and survival. They had failed to impose Catholic and political uniformity on the empire, but they emerged with stronger control over their hereditary lands, especially Bohemia. The dynasty turned increasingly toward building a monarchy centered on Austria, Bohemia, and Hungary rather than trying to transform Germany into a centralized Habsburg state. The imperial title remained prestigious and useful, and Habsburgs continued to hold it almost continuously until the Holy Roman Empire ended in 1806. But the real foundation of their future power lay east of the German heartlands. The post-war Habsburg court embraced the Catholic Baroque. Churches, monasteries, palaces, music, theater, processions, and religious orders reshaped the cultural landscape. Art became a language of recovery and authority. The dynasty presented itself as defender of the faith and guardian of order after chaos. In Vienna, court ceremony grew increasingly elaborate. Rank determined who could approach the ruler, how many steps one might take, where one might sit, and what clothing was appropriate. Such rules can appear ridiculous to modern eyes, but they organized competition among nobles and transformed personal access into political currency. Emperor Leopold I, who came to the throne in 1658, embodied the late 17th century Habsburg style. Originally intended for the church, he was deeply religious, musically talented, and physically marked by the prominent Habsburg lower lip and jaw. He composed music and supported opera at court. He was not a commanding soldier, yet his long reign confronted wars on multiple fronts. Louis XIV of France sought expansion in the west, while the Ottoman Empire renewed pressure in Hungary. Hungary remained the monarchy's most difficult kingdom. Many Hungarian nobles defended their constitutional privileges and Protestant faith against Habsburg centralization and Catholic restoration. Rebellions, conspiracies, and Ottoman alliances complicated the frontier. After an anti-Habsburg conspiracy was uncovered, Leopold's government imposed harsh measures, including executions and attempts at more direct rule. Resistance continued under leaders such as Imre Thököly, whose forces cooperated with the Ottomans. In 1683, a massive Ottoman army under Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha besieged Vienna. The city's defenders held behind damaged walls while relief forces assembled. On September 12th, a coalition army led by the Polish king John III Sobieski attacked from the Vienna woods. The charge of Polish winged hussars became legendary. The Ottomans were defeated and retreated. European memory often treats the battle as a simple civilizational showdown, but the politics were more tangled. Christian powers frequently allied with Muslim ones when convenient. Hungarian Protestants fought against the Catholic Habsburgs, and the Ottoman Empire was itself a complex state with Christian subjects and allies. Still, the failure at Vienna marked a strategic turning point. The Habsburgs and their allies advanced into Hungary in the Great Turkish War. The capture of Buda in 1686 ended a century and a half of Ottoman rule there. Further victories, especially Prince Eugene of Savoy's triumph at Zenta in 1697, pushed the frontier south. The Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699 transferred most of Ottoman Hungary and Transylvania to Habsburg control. The monarchy expanded dramatically. New military, administrative, and settlement policies attempted to integrate war-torn lands populated by Hungarians, Croats, Serbs, Romanians, Germans, Slovaks, Jews, and others. The Habsburg realm was becoming a Danubian empire whose diversity would be both its greatest strength and its permanent political challenge. Prince Eugene became one of the dynasty's most celebrated commanders. Born in Paris but rejected for military service by Louis XIV, he entered Habsburg employment and proved brilliant in campaigns against both the Ottomans and France. His career was a reminder that early modern loyalty could be personal and dynastic rather than national. Nobles served foreign courts, officers changed masters, and identity operated through religion, language, estate, and honor as much as birthplace. Leopold's final years were dominated by the approaching extinction of the Spanish Habsburgs. He claimed the Spanish inheritance for his family, first for himself and then for his sons. When Charles II of Spain instead left the monarchy to Philip of Anjou, Leopold supported the rival claim of his younger son, Archduke Charles. The War of the Spanish Succession brought Habsburg troops back into Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Spain. Prince Eugene won major victories alongside the English commander John Churchill, Duke of Marlborough, including Blenheim in 1704, which destroyed the threat of a Franco-Bavarian advance toward Vienna. The war contained one of history's great dynastic reversals. The Allied powers had opposed a Bourbon inheritance because they feared the union of France and Spain. But in 1711, Archduke Charles's elder brother, Emperor Joseph I, died without a surviving son. Charles inherited the Austrian lands and became Emperor Charles VI. If he also won Spain, he might recreate an empire resembling that of Charles V. Britain and the Dutch Republic no longer wanted that outcome. Their enthusiasm for the Austrian claimant faded, and peace negotiations advanced. The treaties of Utrecht, Rastatt, and Baden ended the war. Philip V remained King of Spain, founding the Spanish Bourbon dynasty, but France and Spain were required to remain legally separate. The Austrian Habsburgs received the Spanish Netherlands and important Italian territories, including Milan, Naples, and Sardinia, though some of these possessions later changed hands. Britain gained strategic and commercial advantages, including Gibraltar and the Asiento Contract connected to the slave trade. The settlement confirmed a central principle of European diplomacy: no single dynasty should dominate the continent. The balance of power had defeated the dream of universal monarchy. Charles VI returned to Vienna as emperor and ruler of an enlarged Central European state, but he carried the dynastic anxiety that had destroyed the Spanish branch. He had no surviving son. His entire reign became increasingly focused on securing the inheritance of his daughter Maria Theresa. The legal instrument he promoted, the Pragmatic Sanction of 1713, declared the Habsburg lands indivisible and allowed female succession if the male line failed. Charles spent years bargaining with European powers and provincial estates for recognition. He offered concessions, changed alliances, and sacrificed advantages. One court after another promised to accept his daughter's rights. Those promises would prove as durable as paper in a rainstorm once he was dead.